She walked down the aisle of the plane, ticket in hand, smiling politely. But when she reached her seat, a white woman blocked her way and said, "This seat isn't for people like you." 20 minutes later, the plane wasn't going anywhere, because the entire flight had been grounded. And everyone finally learned who she really was. Maya Collins stepped onto the jet bridge with the quiet grace of someone used to moving through busy airports. The first-class boarding pass felt warm in her hand, a reminder of the long hours and hard work that had brought her here. She wore a tailored navy suit, her hair wrapped neatly in a silk scarf, a leather briefcase resting on her shoulder. This trip to Los Angeles wasn't for leisure. She was headed to finalize a major corporate partnership, one that could create hundreds of jobs. As she stepped into the cool cabin air of the aircraft, she located 2A, her seat by the window, but paused. A white woman in her mid-50s sat there comfortably, tapping at her phone. Maya smiled politely and said, "Excuse me, I believe you're in my seat." The woman glanced up, her eyes narrowing slightly before sweeping over Maya's outfit. "I don't think so. This seat is for someone who actually belongs here," she replied with a faint, dismissive laugh. The words stung, but Maya's tone stayed steady. "My ticket says otherwise." The woman shook her head and gestured toward the economy cabin. "I'm sure you'll be more comfortable back there." The surrounding passengers shifted uneasily, pretending not to watch, though several sets of eyes lingered. Maya handed her boarding pass to the approaching flight attendant, who confirmed softly, "Yes, ma'am. 2A is hers." Still, the woman refused to move. "Then I want to speak to whoever's in charge," she insisted. The aisle felt narrower, the silence heavier. Maya took a small step back, her face unreadable. She could push harder, but she had a better idea, one that would turn this quiet humiliation into something unforgettable. And it wouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Maya stood quietly in the narrow aisle, watching as the flight attendant disappeared toward the cockpit to check with the captain. The woman in her seat crossed her arms, glancing at her watch as if she were the one being inconvenienced. Around them, passengers exchanged whispers, some pretending to scroll on their phones while sneaking glances. Maya's mind was calm, but her heart beat in a steady, deliberate rhythm. She'd faced this kind of condescension before, in boardrooms, at conferences, even at high-end restaurants, but never this openly, in front of dozens of strangers. She pulled out her phone, tapping a quick message to her assistant, "Delay. At airport, stand by for call." The attendant returned with the purser, who once again confirmed, "Ma'am, this seat is indeed assigned to Ms. Collins." Still, the woman smirked. "I'm not moving. I know important people on this flight. She can sit elsewhere." The purser's polite tone didn't waver, but his jaw tightened. "We cannot depart until all passengers are in their assigned seats." The woman waved him off. "Then let's call security." At that, a flicker of something like amusement touched Maya's eyes. She could already see where this was headed. She stepped aside, letting the airline crew follow procedure. Within minutes, 2 uniformed airport officers boarded, their presence shifting the cabin's energy. The woman looked triumphant, expecting them to escort Maya away. But instead, one of the officers addressed her firmly. "Ma'am, you will need to come with us." Gasps rippled through the rows. Maya said nothing, simply watching as the woman's confident smile faltered. She still didn't know who she was dealing with, but she was about to find out. Maya's plan was in motion, and the clock had just started ticking. The cabin buzzed with low murmurs as the 2 officers guided the protesting woman down the aisle. "This is ridiculous," she barked, clutching her designer handbag. "I'm a frequent flyer. You'll regret this." But the passengers' eyes were no longer on her. They were on Maya, who remained standing near her seat, calm and composed. as though she had been expecting this outcome from the start. Once the aisle was clear, the purser turned to Maya. With a respectful nod, "Please, Miss Collins, you may take your seat now." She smiled politely and settled into 2A, placing her briefcase neatly under the seat in front of her. But instead of relaxing, she pulled out her phone and began typing a short email. Within minutes, she made a call, quiet, brief, and direct. The words, "This is Maya Collins. I need the CEO of this airline on the line now," carried just far enough for the man across the aisle to hear. His eyes widened slightly. The name was familiar. Kea ended the call with a calm thank you and set the phone aside. The crew continued their pre-flight checks, but before they could close the cabin door, a senior airline executive in a crisp suit boarded the plane. He walked straight to Maya, bent slightly, and said with a tone of apology, "Ms. Collins, I'm so sorry for this experience. We'll handle everything immediately." A murmur of confusion swept through first class. The woman who had been removed was still visible on the jet bridge. Now arguing with security, her voice growing louder, her face red. Maya said nothing, only watching as the executive stepped off the plane to speak with the officers. Passengers leaned toward one another, whispering questions. Something was clearly happening. But no one yet understood the full story. The first-class cabin was electric with curiosity. Maya sat back in her seat, her fingers loosely resting on the armrest, eyes fixed on the jet bridge beyond the open door. Through the glass, she could see the airline executive speaking urgently with the officers, while the woman's indignant voice carried faintly into the cabin. "I'm not the one who should be removed. She doesn't belong here." The words made several passengers shift uncomfortably. Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she opened her laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating her composed face. She wasn't checking emails or reviewing contracts. She was pulling up documents that would make this situation impossible to ignore. Moments later, the executive re-entered the aircraft, this time with a noticeably more formal expression. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, addressing the cabin, "we'll be experiencing a short delay due to an onboard seating incident." Murmurs rippled through the rows, but his eyes met Maya's for just a second, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He then approached her seat directly, lowering his voice. "Ms. Collins, I've spoken with corporate headquarters. We understand who you are and the significance of your travel today. I assure you, we'll be making this right." Maya gave a single, polite nod. Across the aisle, a man in a business suit leaned toward his companion, whispering, "That's Maya Collins. She's the CEO of Collins Global." The name spread quietly among the passengers like a current. Outside, the woman's protests had escalated into shouting, but she was no longer the one in control. In the cockpit, the captain had been briefed. And when his voice came over the intercom moments later, it was clear that something far more serious was unfolding. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "for operational reasons, this flight will not be departing just yet." The cabin fell silent at the captain's announcement. Maya closed her laptop slowly, her calm presence now impossible to ignore. The airline executive returned once more, this time followed by two more suited officials who boarded with a sense of urgency. Passengers exchanged puzzled looks. It wasn't every day an entire flight was halted for one incident. The woman who had taken Maya's seat was still outside, but her voice had been replaced by the clipped tones of security officers finalizing a report. One of the executives stepped forward and addressed the passengers directly. "We apologize for the delay, but due to a serious breach of airline conduct and interference with crew operations, we are required to remove a passenger permanently from this flight." His gaze flickered toward the jet bridge, where the woman now stood pale and quiet. She was escorted away without another word. The door to the cabin closed, but the plane still didn't move. Instead, the captain came over the intercom again, this time his tone respectful. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been informed our passenger in seat 2A, Ms. Maya Collins, is here on urgent business with our airline's board of directors. At her request, this flight will remain grounded until her team arrives." A low gasp ran through the rows. Passengers leaned in as a realization dawned. The woman they had just seen insulted and denied her seat was not only the rightful passenger. She was one of the most powerful figures connected to the airline itself. 20 minutes later, a group of sharply dressed board members boarded to meet Maya in person, apologizing profusely. She accepted their words with quiet grace, but her eyes held steady resolve. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about respect, and everyone on that plane would remember it. Asterisk, if this story moved you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Asterisk, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Blax. Stories for more powerful and inspiring stories.